Okay, there we go. Looks like you're ready. Click here. Okay, we are live. This should be working now. All right, I'm going to put out a little announcement. Okay, there we go. Good. Okay. There we go. Sorry, it's a little confusing. I got all these tabs everywhere. I'm going to keep this recording permanent on the channel here. So any questions you guys ask, we can keep them answered for everybody. Feel free to ask me anything about Fire Maneuver, about Master of Command, any of these things. I'm more than happy to answer your questions about. I've already answered quite a few questions on the latest video that I put out. And so if you guys haven't seen it already, I do recommend watching this to get caught up. On videos, we have what happened to Fire Maneuver. And so you can kind of get caught up here if you haven't seen it already. Otherwise, if you guys want to, we can just kind of like chat about Fire Maneuver or just game design in general. Any questions you guys have? I'm probably going to make this like a 30-minute stream where we can just chat about that sort of thing. So yeah, feel free to ask me anything. Hi, Daniel. You've been watching the channel for 5 years. That's quite some time, man. I think the channel's been up for 8 years in total, so you've been watching for the majority of the channel's history. So thank you for being a long-term viewer. How many people here ended up watching the latest video? It seems like the performance was pretty good on that video. A lot of people found it useful, I guess, in getting kind of closure about Fire Maneuver. Yeah. Sir Capo, is Fire Maneuver worth buying? I would say, obviously I have a bias, but I would say it's worth it if you could just get it on sale. I mean, $10 already is pretty cheap, but I've been running it in like every single Steam sale. So whether it's the winter sale or the fall sale or whatever, it can go down to like $4. I think at its lowest sale it's done. And I think for that price, I think it's perfectly reasonable. I still think you'll get some fun out of it. I just think it's definitely just a buggy game, and we weren't able to fully realize everything that we set out to do for it. So I definitely still think you can get some fun out of it. And in fact, on our Fire Maneuver server, I think right now they're doing a tournament. So if you look over on my screen here, right now they're doing a whole tournament on the game with a whole ton of people. I've seen like 30 people in the voice chat before, all playing tournaments. So there are still community events that are active in the multiplayer scene, but you have to be part of the Discord and be part of those kind of organized events. All right. What else? My favorite Pokemon. Well, I don't watch Pokemon, Raphael, so I can't answer you there. Are the units' uniforms accurate? The Fire Maneuver, sorry, I had to close my window. The Fire Maneuver uniforms are pretty accurate to my knowledge. We did a lot of research on those uniforms. I bought a lot of uniform books specifically on it, and our artist, Nico, who created the unit cards, he is very much into historical uniform research and that sort of thing. So I think that we did a pretty good job in that regard. Will I revisit the concept of Fire Maneuver? That's a tough one. You know, like I don't know what that would look like. Like, would that be just a Fire Maneuver 2, or would that just be a Victorian strategy game that's kind of a spiritual successor? In my opinion, that's more... I don't think I'd ever make a Fire Maneuver 2, necessarily. I think what I'd probably do is take the Master of Command battle system, which is our next game, and that battle system is freeform, real-time. It's not turn-based, and I'd probably adapt that to a Victorian setting. And as for the campaign, I'd probably do some kind of like large global campaign system for it. So kind of like a global Victorian Total War, I guess, or something along those lines. But that's quite ambitious to do, and so I think the only time I'd be able to do that is if we are able to pick up our kind of momentum again with our Master of Command game and whatever comes after it, and just kind of like see where things go. It's tough. It's really tough to say. I'm open to... the Victorian period is my favorite time period of all time in history, so I'd love to do another game kind of set in that period. But would I call it a Fire Maneuver 2? Probably not. But I could definitely see myself doing like a spiritual successor or something. What are the forts in the maps for? Adriana, are you asking in Fire Maneuver the forts? I think most of them count as objectives, so you're going to win the campaign by capturing a lot of those forts. They do require you to do the bombard order, which looks like a little cannon when you select your army. Once the walls are fully bombarded and crumbled, you can then assault the fort. And I think a lot of them are also simultaneously logistics hubs. So if you ever find that you're out of supply, or that the enemy has so much supply, you can try to cut that off by... The enemy follows the same logistics rules as you do, so you can actually cut off enemy armies, which is cool. Will you guys make it possible to do mods? I think Scout, like, you've seen a lot of games made by major studios who have lots of funding, and they build their game system, and even if the game flops, you know, the core game system is still there. It's still made well, and in our case, it's, you know, we did our game, and the foundations are just so poorly established that it was never really built for modding. It was never really built to port to mobile. It was never really built with good optimization in mind, and so on. So there's not... I've been getting that question a lot. There's not much for us to build off of, unfortunately. I think in the case of doing mods or doing a new campaign or fixing bugs or any of these kind of requests we have that are Fire Maneuver related, I think that's more suited for a whole new project from scratch. I mean, that's part of the reason Master of Command, which is our next game, we started completely from scratch. That game doesn't have any of the same foundations of Fire Maneuver. Not a single piece of code was reused for it. We just started completely from scratch on it. So I think in terms of modding and other like kind of feature requests and those sorts of things, I think it's just better off for a brand new game at that point. Yeah. Would you do a pike and shot at some point? I think, Bungle, I was considering a game called Free Company, which is more mercenary themed, and I think that would actually be best suited in the pike and shot era. But I think pike and shot is just not very popular. And I would need a lot of funding and a huge following to pull a game off like that, because a pike and shot game I don't think would sell itself. I think people would go, oh, that's kind of interesting. I don't see a lot of games in that time period. And then maybe people just ignore it. I don't know. It's really tough to say what the interest would actually be, because there are so few games to compare to in the pike and shot period. So I'd be a little bit hesitant doing that. I'd probably sooner do a Victorian themed game than a pike and shot. Only because I know that there was an audience for Fire Maneuver. We just didn't capitalize on the audience and give them the game that they wanted. I just don't know if there's really even much of an audience for the 1600s or even really the 1700s as much. It's a little harder in that kind of period compared to the 1800s. But yeah, I could be proven wrong. I don't know. It's too soon to tell. Are we going to continue with Free Company as your next game after Master Command, or are you going to pivot and do something else? It's really tough to say. I have no idea, right? So imagine if Master Command completely flopped. Imagine if it did extremely well. Imagine if it did average. How do we as developers, if it did really well, do we think, okay, we have to capitalize on that, people want another one? Or if it did really poorly, do we think, hey, we don't have much of the funding, we just have to do another one because it's going to be the easiest thing to do next? It almost seems like regardless of what answer of what severity of success Master Command has, it probably makes sense to just do another one. Unless people really liked the game and it did pretty well, but they just didn't, the campaign system didn't resonate with people. Maybe we're like, all right, well, we have the funding, but people clearly don't want another one of these games, so let's try something totally different. It's very difficult to say. I think Free Company is still a game I really want to do for those of people who know about that idea. Imperial Dawn is a game I still want to do, and I see Imperial Dawn as more of the spiritual successor to Fire Maneuver. I just don't know when it's going to be best to do those games. A lot of this is not what I feel like I want to do. A lot of it will come down to the finances. Like, will we be able to, as a development studio, can we tackle these kind of projects? So really we have to wait and see, and it depends both on what you guys want, what our player base ends up wanting when Master Command releases, and the kind of funding and time that we have to put together another project. That being said, I'd love to keep making projects. I want to do, to be honest, I would rather do this kind of as my full-time job than even on doing YouTube videos. That's not to say I'm going anywhere on YouTube, but I think this is definitely a focus for me. So we'll see how things shape up after Master Command and where we want to go afterwards. Okay, outside of historical games, what would you be interested in making? I think for me, I want to stick for the time being to historical strategy, and that's it. I think that's all I have my mind on. Even any of the game ideas I have in my head, it's just within that realm, at least for the time being. Do you ever plan to restart development when you can? Because you spending 2 years in your own savings and abandoning it is a real shame. Do you mean restarting development on Fire Maneuver? I think right now we moved on to a new project called Master Command. I think just restarting on Fire Maneuver Like I said, I kind of answered that a little bit earlier in the stream. If we did another game Fire Maneuver related, it would just be seen more of a spiritual successor. And as far as personal savings go, yeah, I don't have at this point. I think I don't have any savings left to just personally finance games. Master Command will be my last personally financed game, and if we can't come up with any of the financing past that, then either we'd get a publisher or we just move on. I'm not quite sure. Again, a lot of these things we have to see what happens on release, and then see what we have the time for, what we have the money for. Can we attract a publisher to help us, and that sort of thing. So I think it's going to depend on a lot of those factors. Not to give you a non-answer, but genuinely, I couldn't give you a definitive answer now. When let's say we release Master of Command, what if we release Master of Command and we intend on it being a one-off game where we just put it out, and people like it so much that we keep updating it for years and years and build it out into this massive strategy game. So who knows? Like, I don't anticipate that's going to be the case, but I want to have flexible development in a way where we can put out the game and really listen to what players actually want. Maybe they want a new game in a new time period next, or maybe they want us to continue working on it. We'll have to really see what happens. Rip likes the original concept for the Market Garden game. I liked it too. I just don't think... I think the World War II RTS scene is a little bit oversaturated. I'd love to revisit that further in the future, but I think I would want to do it probably in full 3D, and I would need a lot bigger of a budget and a team to pull that off. So yeah, it's not going to be a game we do anytime soon. Okay, so Adriana is talking about custom battles. I'm not quite sure. Are you saying custom battles in the battle mode? They give you a defensive buff, but they don't really count as objectives. So yeah, they're just they are decoration, but they actually do give you a defensive bonus in battle for Fire Maneuver. Vino asks, what nation was the hardest to research? I definitely think the Japanese nations were super tough. We used a YouTube channel called The Shogunate, and the owner of that channel helped us research for the Imperial side and the Shogunate factions, and I could not have done, if he had not helped, I would have thrown out the Shogunate DLC, and probably wouldn't have done, I wouldn't have done any DLC. Maybe I would have done like a one nation thing like Sweden on its own, but I certainly wouldn't have done a big expansion without his help. So he definitely helped the whole Japanese thing come together. Otherwise, more difficult nations to research, probably Italy. Italy was a little bit tougher. And besides Italy, maybe Russia and the Ottomans. The Ottomans, certainly. If I had to say the two toughest would be Italy and the Ottomans. They're a little bit difficult. There's just not as much information on them. Rez, who's actually a developer on our studio, says, question from the Steam discussion page, is the game going to be still on Steam, or are you guys removing it? Yeah, so we're not taking down Fire Maneuver. We're going to leave it up, and we will continue entering it into sales if people do want to try it out. But by the way, I did get a question, a lot of people saying, well, I really want a refund, but I guess by this update video, you're never giving refunds. You just scammed the game, scammed us and left. And that's not the case at all. If you play the game for less than 2 hours on Steam, you can put in a refund request and you can get your money back. That's also, of the 350,000 people who got the game for free, they get to keep it for free. So I think 6,000 people bought the game and 350,000 people, we gave it away for free. You get to keep it. To all 350,000 people, they keep it for free forever. They will never have that game taken away from them. So if you picked up the game while it was free, you keep it. And if you paid for the game, you didn't like it, the refunds are open. That's not my policy. That's purely a Steam policy. So anybody criticizing me that I'm not accepting refunds or something, yeah, that's not the case. That you have to take that up with Steam, and Steam will give you a refund. That is not within my control. So somebody calling it a scam, like that's a ridiculous statement. Also, the game still functions, and if it doesn't function for you, if you can't boot it up or have a hardware problem, you can refund it. There's no problem at all with that. I cannot stop you. But if you do like the game, or you play it, and if you play it within less than 2 hours and you decide you didn't like it, you can definitely return it. And it's not a scam because there are people. Check out some of the reviews. Even some of the top negative reviews have 500 hours in the game. Clearly, that's not a scam or cash grab if some people are getting that many hours out of the game. So, I hate when people call it that, not to be defensive about it, but it's untrue. So there's not much nuance I can provide on that. Anyways, what else have we got? Do you know what sort of split there was between single player and multiplayer? That's a good question, Mika. I believe we looked at the stats, and I don't have any formal data. We weren't doing like any formal tracking, but I'm pretty sure about 70 to 80% of the games played within Fire Maneuver were single player. despite single player really not being a focus. Nowadays, I think it's probably a little bit different just because there's a very small player base and they're almost entirely on our Discord. Like I said, people are still playing the game as I'm streaming right now. They're doing a tournament. So, yeah, it really depends. But, yeah. What's your opinion? Oh, I hate when the chat jumps like that. Let's see. What's your opinion on competitive play in Fire Maneuver? Yeah, I think it's really cool. I mean, I did all of the design for the factions. I mean, a lot of the community did help us with the unit design, but we tried very hard to make every faction stand out, and I love seeing that people can still find ways to be competitive in the game. I do wish that we had the effort and resources and the team to go back and like tinker with the factions a little bit more. I've said this before, maybe if Master Command does really well, we might have the time to just do some balancing changes and maybe a couple little bug fixes if we're able to, but I just can't promise anything. So we'll just have to see. Why is there no map idea? Why did you listen to people with bad ideas? Okay, well, Hedgebuy, honestly, I didn't really listen to anybody else. I just made the game that I wanted to make, so I don't really have anybody to blame it on, to be honest. The map maker was built within Unity. So again, it's difficult from your guys' perspective. I can easily see, like, people are like, why not make it open source, or why not just like chip away at the game or update it? A lot of these things, when you look at the actual foundations of the game internally, there were things set up that just are not going to be able to be worked on much further, or if they are, we'd have to tear them down entirely and spend months and months and months rebuilding them from scratch. And at that point, dude, it's just, yeah. In terms of the map editor, that was built within Unity. You have to have Unity open on our project side to actually utilize the editor. And in addition to that, it utilizes 32 gigabytes of VRAM, which I did not pay myself a single dollar for 2 years of development on the game. I worked 9 to 5 in addition to my YouTube job every day, at least 8 hours a day. And for those 2 years, I did not pay myself a single dime. Even now, I have not paid myself a single. The Armchair History interactive bank account is like $1,000. Everything that I currently do with the current development team is all personally financed. I've not received a single dollar. I say that because the only time I actually took a dollar out of the account when the game launched was to pay for a new graphics card with higher VRAM, and send my old one in and got refunded for it in order to run the map editor. And this is not the developer's fault entirely. There's blame we can put around on all sides. It's just we had no time. It was just a bit mass rush to get all these things done. A game like this shouldn't have had a map editor. It shouldn't have had multiplayer. It shouldn't have had all these systems. It really just should have been a few core gameplay systems that we could have got done in time, polished. And so it's physically impossible to give you guys a map editor unless we rebuilt the whole thing from scratch. It's, you know what I mean? So from that perspective, it's difficult. It seems easy on the outside, but when you actually look at the code and the development on the inside, it is hectic. It is messy. What's really cool is that for Master Command, we are building the map editor so that it could be utilized by players. Now, I will preface that there is no guarantee, and most likely it will not be accessible for Master Command. However, its foundations are being built with that possibility in order for us to one day expand it to give it to players. Whether that's a future Master Command game or totally separate game or an update, who knows, right? But at the very least, all of the foundations of this game have modability in mind. They have multiplayer in mind, and they have what's it called, like the map editor and stuff in mind. But none of those things will be accessible from the start of the game. You guys won't be able to access those things because if I do commit to letting you access them, add 6 months for one, add 6 months for another, add 6 months for another in development, and suddenly this game has gone way out of scope and we've got years of development to try to put that in. So in my opinion, we're building the foundations to allow for those things to one day come into fruition. Whereas in Fire Maneuver, a lot of those things were just built with rotten foundations. We could never have expanded them. Like the map editor, I can never give you guys that. For Master Command, you will not get the map editor at first, but maybe in the future, or maybe in a sequel or something like that, the foundations can be built off of. You do not need to use Unity to, or you will not have to use Unity to run that map editor. So again, everything we're doing, even the modability, right? Like we're not gonna have mod support on day one, but the code was written in such a way that we could one day have modability. Fire Maneuver just doesn't have that case. You're never going to be able to mod that game. The whole thing's going to break if you. Some people have tried, but it's very, very difficult. And finally, with multiplayer, Master Command doesn't have multiplayer, but we built the whole foundation of the battle system so that we could add on network code. Anybody who does coding knows adding multiplayer onto something that was not intended for multiplayer is very difficult. You may have to rebuild all the systems from scratch. And so for us, we're not launching with multiplayer, but we've made sure the foundations have multiplayer in mind. So one day we could add that, right? So everything is just being done in a much smarter way, being prudent, as in like building these systems for the future so they can last, and not building them as a one-off and then we're gonna have to restart from scratch in the next game. And so yeah, anyways, not to go off too much on that question, but I think that is just a good question to talk about some other things for. Let's see. What happened to the World War II game? What that we're going to reuse assets from the video? Oh, we were working on that, Will, but I just thought, why overextend us? That's MMCB is mentioning that too, like Project Khaki or the board game. Honestly, I would love to do all those things, but I just said, for my own well-being and to not oversaturate what we're doing, let's just hone in and focus on one core game. And if that game does well, then we can kind of expand out. But for me, the smartest possible thing, if there's any lessons to learn from Fire Maneuver, one of the biggest ones is to just be really focused and not get distracted with a bunch of other crap. So I like those ideas. The other ideas that we had spoken about, whether you guys know them or not, I've had other live streams where I've talked about other game ideas or board games and stuff. I'm not going to pursue anything else until Master Command is absolutely finished. I don't want to be distracting myself and spreading development time thin. Don't you think the development of campaigns was completely unnecessary, Garrett says, and instead focus on multiplayer? I do agree with the game optimization. I think that is important. Surprisingly, Garrett, a lot of the people, like the 20 or 30 super active players in the Fire Maneuver server, mostly play it for the multiplayer, right? But the hundreds of players who passively come in day to day, all of those guys actually play the campaign and single player. So despite what we think, like we all imagined Fire Maneuver as a competitive multiplayer game, that's how I thought of it, and a lot of the diehard people in the community think of that as well. The stats tell us and the analytics show us and surveys that most people are spending most of those hours in campaign and AI games, surprisingly. So I think it was actually the opposite. Had we launched the game with no multiplayer, first of all, if there was no multiplayer in Fire Maneuver, the game would have been done like 6 months faster and with half as many bugs. So that would have fixed a million things off the bat. And all of that time we would have spent working on multiplayer could have been spent on making a really good campaign system, for example. So in general, in my opinion, multiplayer systems, especially for like a strategy game like this, should not be worked on unless you have a full core game system that's really good, really smooth, and you have got time to kill. Then you can work on multiplayer. That's just my opinion. Will says, generally your channel's World War II focus, so could that hamper your ability to market these non-World War II games? I've thought about that, Will. I think it's yes and no. Like, surprisingly, World War II content I make now does not perform very well on my channel. It's actually World War I and 1800s content that seems to be doing better, which is actually, go figure, like Fire Maneuver, a Victorian game, actually fit into that, which led to its success. But yeah, it's tough to say. I think there are so many World War II RTSs that it's actually just really hard to stand out. Whereas if I said point me to like linear warfare, musket warfare games that are strategy, you have very few you can point to, and I think that actually plays into the success we could have on Steam. So marketing to people who watch YouTube videos, not a lot of the people who watch our YouTube videos play video games, right? So if we built the game entirely for them, a lot of those guys may not even be playing it. But a game that we're making could probably succeed on its own just with the Steam market alone. So we're trying to make a game that has a little bit of overlap with our YouTube audience, but we also want to make sure it's original and unique for a Steam audience too. That being said, after marketing Master Command a little bit, I am realizing there are just less people interested in the 1700s relative to like late 1800s or even Napoleonic. So that's not to say Master Command's going to do poorly or that I'm going to change our game at all. I'm still really excited to do the 7 Years' War because it's not covered as often. In fact, I want to do a whole documentary series on my YouTube channel about the 7 Years' War. But yeah, I can definitely see people having more of a bias for like the 1800s. And as far as World War II goes, I think I would need like a lot of like, I think I would want the time and the money and to do full 3D if I did something like that to really stand out. Like, look at Gates of Hell. That's like a really polished, very realistic, competitive World War II RTS. But how many linear warfare games can you point out like Gates of Hell? Like, I could name Men of War, Company of Heroes, Gates of Hell. They've really set the bar high. So, yeah. If you're looking for a publisher, Paradox Interactive might be a good option. Yeah, VTuber, I'm not so sure. I am looking for a publisher. I don't want to say I am speaking with one kind of right now. And I don't want to say who it is until like I've spoken with them a little bit further. But I will be sending in my game for review to see if they want to pick it up or not, and we'll kind of take things from there. But yeah, I have contacts at Paradox, and I've spoken to a couple, even someone who's worked on developing a game at Paradox. I don't know if our game really fits within their portfolio very well, and yeah, I don't know. It's a good suggestion, but I don't know if our game really focuses on what the core pillars... Like, even, for example, modability is almost a requirement for almost all Paradox games that come out. And I just don't think this game is not one where we're going to be able to launch with modability. Like, we're just really focusing in on a couple core systems that we want to be really polished, and I don't want publishers like requesting. That's not to say Paradox requires that. I don't know. I haven't had a conversation with Paradox about it. I'm just saying their games tend to go in that direction, and they tend to be sandbox games, and that's not really what we're working on with Master Command. Did you do any actual marketing for Fire Maneuver, or was it just trailers on YouTube? I did marketing. I did collaborations with a lot of other gaming channels. The thing is, Fire Maneuver was so buggy that a lot of gaming channels and streamers just couldn't get through the game, and that actually really hurt it. So I'm actually excited that in Master of Command, I'm very confident that streamers will be able to do full, legitimate playthroughs of the game and multiple playthroughs with replayability. So, yeah. Did you know the Friedrich board game, the Master Command board game, are really similar. I don't know that board game, the Friedrich board game. I'm not sure what that is. Let's see here. Oh, that's cool. They kind of do like the little nodes and everything. And they've kind of got the same focus in that same area. We've actually expanded our game a bit to be a bit larger than what this is focusing on. I'd say the original Master Command, Prussian Glory, was definitely focused on this area, but we've broadened things out pretty considerably to bring in a little bit more appeal from a larger audience. So yeah. Animations of the new battle system are looking great. Thanks, Mika. I appreciate that, man. Financing aside, the game and game development history, are you proud of this game? Of Fire Maneuver or Master Command? In terms of Fire Maneuver, I do have pride in like we actually reached the finish line. We finished a game. It's buggy, right? But like we actually did it. We shipped a game, and that to me is super, super challenging. Dude, we worked so hard on it. I remember there are over 100 maps in the game, and I built all of those by hand myself. There are systems. Thomas built the entire campaign system by himself. This game was made by like 4 people in terms of like the actual full-time developers. Now, it was made by like 15 people if you consider people who went on for a month, did a bunch of work, and then maybe like were contracted for specific parts of the game. But in terms of the people who were there every single day, every hour of every day, it was like 4 or 5 people, including myself. And we handled a gigantic game. So I'm proud of actually getting to the finish line for something so massive. In terms of the actual finished product, I don't feel as much pride as I wish I would. There are some things I'm just ashamed about that it sucks. It sucks having released a game and you just know there's issues that you're not going to be able to fix, and that does suck. In Master of Command, our next game, I'm very proud of how it's shaping up. I think the development is going very quickly. I like to tell people how it's going basically now is it is going 2 times as quickly in terms of development at like half the cost. So it is moving way more efficiently than Fire Maneuver ever did. And I don't even know a single game-breaking bug. Like I can go on and anything that was built for the game just works. I can go on to the battle system, and I'll probably make a dev diary literally next week, showing that the battle system already pretty much works. So yeah. Will you ever get a publisher? I'm considering getting a publisher for Master Command, but I probably wouldn't take any financing. I'm not sure yet. It's really too soon to tell. Hedgebuy says, why'd you screw over Joao and abandon the War of the Triple Alliance? I don't think the War of the Triple Alliance DLC was ever even being worked on. The numbers work out like this. A DLC probably costs about $10,000 to $20,000 to make. I don't even know if that's considering the development time. If you consider like actual dev time, like getting the whole team to work on it full time, that's probably like $28,000. And the actual earnings would be projected at like $6,000 to $10,000. So screwing over Joao is saying, why didn't you lose $18,000 of money that you don't have? Again, it's like I'm not even necessarily getting defensive about it, but it's like, where do you guys think that money like comes from? I know I'm a YouTuber with 2 million subscribers, but our expenses, even for the last like 2 years, our expenses of animation that we do equal out to the actual revenue we earn. I don't think my YouTube channel has been profitable for like a year and a half. So that side of things, I don't have like $18,000 to throw around. I don't have like a fancy car and a mansion that I'm driving in. Like everything that we're doing, I'm paid $0 an hour to work on the studio, and a lot of our devs are paid like very minimal rates of what would be industry standard. All of us are in it for the long run to try to make a studio work. It's very, very difficult. So in terms of if you guys raised, I don't know, $30,000, then while we were working on Fire Maneuver, then we would be able to do it. It's just the math doesn't work out. And that's not to say I'm entitled to people paying for the game if it doesn't work and people aren't enjoying it. Of course, I'm not going to ask people. That's a reason too. Like I'm not going to ask people for money if the game isn't working properly, and I just don't have the resources or the time to finish it. And yeah, in terms of committing to that DLC, we never promised the players we'd be able to do that DLC. I really wanted to do the Triple Alliance, but we just didn't have the time or the budget to do it. It's just not possible. So I don't know. Maybe in the future, if we ever do a Victorian game again, we can squeeze in like South America and stuff. But yeah, from an outside perspective, it's like, oh, why don't you just snap your fingers and in a month you have a whole new DLC with all these factions? But it's a lot more complicated than that. And yeah, it's not as easy as like even what we do on the YouTube channel side of things. Our YouTube videos cost a ton of money and take a lot of time, and that is like 1,000th the amount of work as it is to make a game. It pales into comparison. Everything you've seen us do with our YouTube channel, with all the animations and all the production quality that we have in that, it pales in comparison to what making a game is like. It's incredibly difficult. And the rewards, just by the way as well, in terms of the indie studios that actually succeed in making games, you guys realize there are, I forget what the exact numbers are, there's like 15,000 games on Steam released every year. Like less than 0.1% of them actually succeed, actually like profit and do well. You are basically rolling a dice, like going to a casino and betting like 0.1% on yourself. And anybody who fails could lose all of their savings, lose everything, lose their entire studio. It is like, it is completely crazy for people to work on games. It's so expensive. And unless you've got a publisher and you have a history of making games and you've got a really good deal, it could break your entire studio, and it's difficult. It costs a lot of money. It's tough. Okay. Are you going to make Fire Maneuver like a Paradox and Total War style? Philip, the next game we're working on, Master Command, is focused on real-time battles, and it has kind of like a Mount and Blade style campaign system, which I'm excited to show you guys. We actually threw out, I think the last video we made on the design overview of Master Command, it showed like a node system reminiscent of, what are they called? Roguelike games like Slay the Spire. We got rid of that, and actually we're doing like a real-time campaign system, which I think is pretty cool. I'll show you guys later. I don't want to talk about it too much yet, but I will show you when it's ready. Powering says, I think that dropping Fire Maneuver was the best option you could do as a dev studio. It must have lifted a lot of stress. It was a great game, regardless. Impressive feat from your side. Thank you, man. Yeah, I don't think people realize, and this is not to get sympathy, but when you're staying up all night and your eyes are baggy and you're tired and you're asking your developers who are underpaid, like all of us are underpaid, like I'm not getting paid, they're underpaid for what I wish I could be paying them. When you ask them, they have to stay after hours and they're staying up all night. And that's not something we did frequently, but let's say up to the release of the game, the initial release, like those 1 to 2 weeks, working all night, waking up at like 6 a.m. and then working until like 1 or 2 a.m. I mean, it takes, you can see these things take like a mental toll. They're tough, right? But when it takes a physical toll and your back hurts and your neck hurts and your head is throbbing, it is just, and you're having trouble breathing from stress. Like you can't take deep breaths because your chest is tight. That kind of level of stress. And again, that's not for sympathy. That's just what the reality is. And we shouldn't have taken on a project that's large, of that kind of size. And I don't want to ask developers to do that if they're not getting compensated for that level of work at the level that they're working at. So we just quickly said, look, we can't afford it. I can't afford to pay you guys what you deserve for working on this. We just have to cut our losses and do something smarter that's better and work on a more focused, polished game. And hopefully we can all benefit and raise the studio back up by doing something that's going to come out better. And working on Fire Maneuver, again, think about the math here. If I gave away 350,000 copies of the game, which is a lot of free copies, even if I spent a year and I put $100,000, probably $120,000 or more, which is money I don't have, but let's just say I crowdfunded it or something, and we put that into the game, who else is going to buy the game? You know, so like it matters a lot that those first 2 weeks of the sales that you get on a game, it matters a ton even to just compensate your studio to break even on the project. So this is not talking about like how many Bugattis can I buy, right? Or like what kind of mansion can I buy with getting rich on making an indie game. It's really, really tough. And just breaking even on your project is a massive undertaking. And when you've already given away hundreds of thousands of copies, which is insane, there's no possible way you will ever make any money back on that. Everybody already has it for free. And so at that point, you really just have to cut your losses. And it's unfortunate. Again, when you guys also think like some people think they're like, oh, he's money grabbing, he doesn't care about it. I spent 2 years of my life working, like it consumed my life for 2 years. I worked so hard on it. I built that tabletop simulator mod. I built just as a proof of concept, that alone was like thousands of hours I spent just building it as a tabletop game first. I was painting like miniature models to like build physical representations to test out the game. I would go on with the community and we would play games all night long, taking feedback and doing surveys and hosting tournaments, doing events. It ate into my YouTube channel so much that my YouTube channel for like a whole year was underperforming and losing money because I was spending so much time on it. So in terms of the amount of dedication I put toward it, it was everything I cared about, everything. It was the project I was most passionate about. And so for people to say it's like a money grab, first of all, it's like a money grab that I made no money on, that I cared so much about. It's like those two things to me, from your perspective, I know it seems like a different story, but from my perspective, it just, that's my side of it. Again, that's not to get sympathy from you guys, but that's just so you can understand like what my perspective was on that. Anyways, I don't want to go too much into that, but yeah. VTuber says, I know you earlier lamented how you didn't reach your target audience. Was there a reason you didn't advertise as much as you could have? Secondly, did you wish for some other YouTubers to advertise? I think for Fire Maneuver, it wasn't even a matter of the visibility of the game. We had like 1,600 players playing concurrently on day one, which is really impressive, and hundreds of thousands of downloads. It's just that nobody could play the game because it wasn't really finishable. I mean, how many times for you guys did you crash or have bugs? Or I don't think a lot of YouTubers just wanted to play the game. I had a lot of YouTubers and a lot of streamers who were excited for it. I had a huge contact list of like 100 people, and I think like one or two ended up making stuff about it because it just wasn't a good game for them, at least, in terms of doing like a long-term stream. The next game we're making, I definitely think regular players, streamers, YouTubers, whoever you are, I think you can get a lot of value out of the replayability. We're building this game solely for this like replayability with like shaking up the regions that you're fighting in and having some elements of random generation with handcrafted scenes. And we have unlocks that you can progress toward. Nothing like scummy or like microtransactions. In fact, there's no DLC at all planned for the game right now in any way. Once you buy the game, you've got it, and you've got all these replayable systems. So I'm really excited to get your guys' feedback and to show you what we've been working on for Master Command. Like I said, the next dev diary will probably come out like next week even. And show off the battle system. But the campaign system, it's not too ambitious. It's not like a big map conqueror, like you're conquering all of Europe or something. But I do think it's got a lot of replayability and definitely immerses you as a general in the 18th century. And I think that's pretty cool. So let's keep moving on here. Yeah, the Confederate campaign took 11 attempts. Yeah, I think we had some issues in the campaign with the enemies restoring casualties super easily. And yeah, that was tough. Even if you'd win a battle, they would like come back with like all their men. That was tough. Can you make more soundtracks for the game? I think, Lee, I am making more Master of Command. We're making some marches for it. We're probably going to make at least 5 historical marches. You can even see we posted one. One of our last videos we posted, one of our latest videos, is a Hohenfriedberger March rendition that we did. So we've got more music on the way by Jacob, and he's going to be composing with us going forward. Garrett says, the Master Command game will just be a 7 Years' War, or could it be a 1700s game? That's tough, Garrett. I don't know. Like, I originally wanted to just do a smaller project and just be done and just prove to you guys that we can get a game done. But the more I work on it, it does feel more like a general 1700s game. Like the way we're producing the campaign, you're not really recreating the 7 Years' War. You have your own dynamically created 1700s war experience that's random for you. You're not following any historical footsteps. So it is kind of a weird kind of thing we're doing with like calling it 7 Years' War, but it's not much like you're reenacting the 7 Years' War. It's tough to say. I definitely think though the game will be symbolic of the 1700s as a whole. And therefore, if people want to and the game does really well, I could see us making DLC that don't necessarily pertain to the 7 Years' War. That being said, there's a lot of expansions we could do. Again, I'm not planning to do any of them right now, but there are expansions we could do if people wanted it. That could expand the 7 Years' War by adding the Americas or adding India and adding the Pomeranian front with the Swedes or adding Spain. There's a lot of directions you can actually take it to bring in all the other countries. So, yeah. Let's keep moving on. Spain will not be in the new game, but like I said, Spain and Portugal were in the 7 Years' War. So if the game does really well and you guys want it, I can expand it and try to add that sort of thing. But right now we're just focusing on Britain, France, Prussia, Austria, and Russia, the core 5 nations in Central Europe within the 7 Years' War. That's kind of our focus right now. I know it's too early to say, but is it possible to add a DLC future for the new game, maybe featuring Crimea or the American Civil War? The next game is focused on the 1700s, so Crimea or the American Civil War wouldn't really fit in. We are focusing exclusively on the 7 Years' War in Central Europe right now. Let's see here. That number is skewed by the amount of memes they posted on there. I'm not sure what he's saying. I hear Mountain Blade, my ears perk up. Yeah, Rip, we are doing, I'll show you like a little example on our updates tab. So like the idea here is that you pick a region to campaign within. So let's say I choose Silesia to send my army. Sorry, there we go. It will randomly generate like a piece of terrain for you, and your army will spawn in, and you can go to different towns or villages or engage with armies or find encounters, and your objective is going to get to the end of this map to beat the enemy headquarters in that area. And it's all real-time, free-form movement. And if you conquer enough of these regions, you win the campaign. Now, every time you play, there could be new challenges or new factors or different regions or different armies. We have a lot of different ways to make this refreshing and dynamic and different every time. And I'll have probably dev diaries just exploring the replayability aspect, because it doesn't seem initially as replayable. But once I get into those details and you can see how all of those game mechanics we built in, you'll definitely see how we built it with replayability in mind. But yeah, you can move around in free form and kind of like explore areas, and there's like encounters, like an event that you could get about a broken caravan. Maybe you loot it, or maybe there's an ambush there. There's enemies that you can find on that map and that sort of thing. So you feel like you're actually moving around on a map in real time as an actual general. And we'll probably in just a couple weeks have like a little showcase or a little preview on our Discord server to show how that's working. I already have it functionally working. This all works in the game. The thing that we're missing is the art. We have an artist, I think right now, look at the chat. We've got all of our developers in. We've got 2 artists working right now on building maps like this. So we just have to get the artwork in, and literally the functionality of this game, a lot of the functionality of Master Command works, but you can just see like we're missing a lot of artwork that we're working on. For example, looking at like the UI here, that's a work in progress, or even the battle system here. I have just some screenshots. You can notice everybody's wearing the wrong uniforms. Like all the battles function. There's even early AI working. Even this early in development, we've got AI and troops are fighting in real time and engaging. We just have to get a lot of the artwork and post-processing effects and color correction and get an art style kind of down for things. Yeah. All right, let's carry on here. Which faction are you most proud of creating for Fire Maneuver? I don't know. I don't really have an individual faction I'm most proud of. I just like how we balanced all the factions to be so different. I don't really have pride toward one individual faction necessarily. In terms of like a faction I find most interesting, I think Prussia is very interesting because they don't have like long-range weapons, but they have like a lot of mobility, and you can contrast that with countries like France who don't have a lot of mobility, but they have really long-range weapons. So I like the way that those factions kind of like match up against each other. Lucky7 says, we're all praying for MOC to be a success. You already have a community for Fire Maneuver. Yeah, man, I hope you guys will trust me. And look, you do not need to spend money on pre-orders. We will not take your money for pre-orders. We will not take your money for microtransactions. We will not take your money for DLC. We will not have day 1 DLC. None of those things are going to be in the game. We're just going to create a nice one-time payment, polished game for you guys. You can check the reviews on the release, and if you like it and people like it, you can decide to buy it. But I'm not going to ask you to pre-order it or to just trust us on this. I'm going to show you through proof that we are capable of making a more polished game than Fire Maneuver. So I hope that you guys will kind of stick with me through the course of development. And yeah, we'll have a chance to prove it to you on that release day. Yeah. People often forget how much work it takes to make a game, much less a strategy game. Even your YouTube videos probably take thousands to develop. Yeah, Gabriel, it is a lot, man. It's a lot. And even God Awful Productions here is saying, why do you spread yourself so thin? Honestly, I basically have 3 full-time jobs. I do the streaming service on Armchair History TV, where we create weekly, fully original, exclusive videos with a mobile app, with different creators that we work with. We're launching an agency to also help historical content creators find sponsorships too. I do the YouTube channel full-time, where we create 3 videos every month, and I run and direct and design for a game studio that we've created. So it's a lot of work. I will say this year is my last year doing it full time. This is taking a physical toll on me now, where I can't, like, this is not for sympathy, and I don't mean to overshare, but you asked the question, but this is reaching a breaking point to me where I can't really do this anymore. And I do think next year something will be, I think I will lean more into my streaming service and my game studio. And I think YouTube is probably going to take a step back. I'm going to take a step back on the YouTube channel sometime next year. That doesn't mean we're canceling the channel, or we're shutting the whole thing down. It just means I won't be relying full-time on YouTube, most likely. I will be probably releasing multiple documentaries on the website and have my Master Command fully released before that happens, though. I need all of those things to happen, and then we'll have enough revenue coming in where I could probably take a step away from YouTube. I don't really like the direction the YouTube is going in anyways. I think it's full of clickbait crap and spam and AI content, and I'm not interested in it. I would just yeah, it's it's not great. So I would like to step a little bit further away from it next year. But yeah, this year's been tough. I think it's been really difficult to find a good balance this year. But yeah, we're gonna get through it, and the year's almost done. And yeah, all right, let's move on here. Another question: are you interested in focusing on combatants in the Caribbean or in Latin America, or just between Spanish and Brits? Adriana, I think for the 7 Years' War game, we are just gonna cover Central Europe, so we're not gonna be covering anything with like the Spaniards or America, at least for now. Joao says it's sad that the Paraguayan DLC wasn't possible. Dude, I know, Joao. For everyone who's like, oh, you suck for not creating that. It's like, if I had the time and the money to do it, I would have loved to do that. I think the War of the Triple Alliance is so interesting. All three of the factions between Brazil and Argentina and Paraguay would have been super interesting to play with and to see their uniforms and doing South American environments. I would have built all the maps for that. That would have been so much fun. I just can't. I can't do it. That being said, Joao, if I ever do a Victorian game again, I would love to have the chance to do it, and I will let you know when that happens. Maybe there will be an Imperial Dawn Victorian style historical strategy game far in the distance that we can look forward to. That if we have the money and the funding and the time to do it, then maybe we can do that one day. Yeah. VTuber says, will you ever add new content for your new game featuring the Great Northern War? I do think a lot of people will want Sweden in the game, and I think because we have the Russians already in, I don't even think we need to create a separate campaign within the Great Northern War. I think that probably would just be playable on its own. We'll see, though, but a lot of people have been asking for the Swedes. So I think if there's any country to add next after the game comes out, if people want it, it'd probably be Sweden. So sorry, I'm just trying to get caught up to where we're at now. Do you think Fire Maneuver would have been more successful if the gameplay was more similar, but a different time period? LFD, I think the time period was the biggest thing that helped the game, actually. I think the Victorian period is honestly what brought in a lot of the interest. I think if it was Napoleonic, it would have been still pretty interesting. People would have been interested, but I think the Victorian period was so unique for it that I think a lot of people really liked that. Are you planning on remastering your 7 Years' War video? I am, Guy, and I'm probably going to coincide the remaster release of the 7 Years' War documentary with the release of our 7 Years' War game and have both of them come out at the same time. So I think that'll be pretty cool. Are you going to put MOC on a cloud gaming platform? I don't know. I don't think so. I kind of know what you mean there. I haven't actually thought about that. Maybe. I'll look into that, but I don't have plans on that right now. I saw what unfiltered YouTube actually looks like these days, and I don't even see how people... What is he saying? I don't see how people... can use it. I'm not sure what you mean by that, Rip. I'm not sure what you mean by that. Oh, these are cool. I've got some thumbnails sketched up for some upcoming videos. We have a video on Goa coming out, which is an AHTV exclusive. And then for free on YouTube, we're doing a video on the Indo-Pakistan War. And I have these two really cool thumbnails. One showing the troops and then one showing the tanks. I'm going to put both thumbnails up and let people kind of choose what they prefer. YouTube has a new feature where you can test between different thumbnails. Yeah, these look awesome. Anyways, yeah, not to make things about YouTube, but I just got those delivered now, so just figured I'd show that off. All right, we'll wrap up the stream now. I don't think I have too much else to talk about. I will leave this stream up for you guys, and you can go back and what's it called? Review the stream if you missed anything. Yeah. Why ban questions? I have not banned a single question. I have read through almost all of the questions that have been posted, and I've responded to literally every single question that was posted on the latest video I released. So banning questions is not what I'm doing. If I skipped a question, then you can re-ask it. But yeah, I've not banned anybody. I don't know what the hell you're talking about. Belgian guy says, I have a suggestion. On MOC, you can see unit stats. I think it'd be fun if you could see how many units that kills the unit got. I will show you really quick, Belgian guy. Take a look at our battle system here. Let me see if I want to update this. I don't want to update that just yet. Take a look at our battle system. You can actually do that right now. I already have that fully designed. So we haven't released our first dev diary for Master Command yet, and we're already ahead of where Fire Maneuver was. So I'll show you a little bit of how that looks. God Awful says, how do you plan on directing people toward the streaming service and game without as much promotion on YouTube? Well, I think right now, because I'm doing YouTube full time, I'm relying on all 3 videos coming out each month to be the main source of sponsorship revenue. So I'm not shouting out my website or my game very much at all on YouTube. If I was only releasing 1 YouTube video per month and I wasn't relying on it for income, then every month I could do a website or a game shout out. Every single month I could do that. So if anything, I could actually improve the marketing for those other projects, I think. Um, da, 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 da. Sorry, I'm just trying to catch up here. After you guys have a lot of experience in game dev under your belt, do you think you'd ever attempt a Fire Maneuver 2? Yeah, so earlier in the stream I answered that a little bit, so you may want to, when the stream ends, you may want to go back and rewind it and listen to that part, but I did basically say that we were considering, I would consider it kind of a spiritual successor game, but I don't think I would ever title a game Fire Maneuver 2. I would probably make a Victorian-era strategy game if I have the opportunity again. I would love to do that, but I don't think I would title it Fire Maneuver 2. I'd probably use this battle system that we're working on now. There's a bunch of placeholders here, but yeah, you can see we have like a real-time battle system. And again, this game is not even released and there are like virtually no bugs. I mean, there's things that are buggy or like things that aren't fully plugged in yet, but the game doesn't like crash on you or like units aren't clipping off the map or anything like that. So this all works. But Belgian guy, you can see here Prussian Musketeers. Like you could see the text is a little glitchy here. Obviously, we need to polish that. A lot of this needs polishing. But look at this unit. He's preparing to fire. He shoots. Did he get any kills? He got 116 kills. That's a lot, actually. So probably toned down the damage, but you can actually see, look, and then he lost 100 men. So he killed 116, he's lost 100. And then you can see the AI is forming up and firing volleys at me. Ignore the uniforms. Everybody's wearing pink uniforms. The uniforms are not done yet. But you guys can see, like, the real-time battle system fully works. I can even toggle between volley fire and turn that off and on. You can toggle your firing modes. I could take off my bayonets. Look, take on and off the bayonets. I can tell my guys to run. We can form different formations, like column or square. We already have a lot in the game, and we haven't even shown you guys like a lot of the dev diary stuff. So, yeah, I'm excited to reveal this more formally later on. I don't know if this is off topic, but can you better explain the difference between Recruit and Sarge tier for my subscription service? Yeah, so I don't want to make this a big like advertisement or anything, but I'll just show you guys a little bit, just if you're curious what these the different memberships mean. So we have the Sarge and Recruit. The Sarge tier gets these blue check marks. That's what's unique. So you get a 5% shop discount. Anything you buy on the shop automatically gets a 5% discount applied. When we do votes, we'll do votes in, for example, if you look at the feed, we'll do like recommend topics. So we do like topic suggestions, and then we let people vote on them. So the Sarge tier people actually get to vote on the topics that we get to do. And we have an exclusive podcast. And so the podcast episode, let's take a look here. Where is it? Let's go featured. Oh, I can't view it there. Let's take a look at our podcasts. The Sarge tier can see the extended edition. See how it says uncut? They can see the longer editions of our podcasts. And that is what the Sarge tier gets. Officer tier, this is a work in progress. That's why we've got kind of like a white check mark here. We're rolling that out probably like this month or next month. But we're doing like a briefing system where like every month we can give exclusive production insight about how our videos are made. And then in addition to that, you get to come up with the topics. So you actually get to write to us what topics you want. And then the sergeants and officers get to put it to a vote, and they get to vote on what the topics they want. And then the officer gets a 10% discount on top of that. And so that's what our website does. All right, let's move on here. Do I want to... honestly, Gabriel, collaborations, I'm not a big fan of collaborations on YouTube, and I think I probably will not do any collaborations. No, I don't have anything against YouTubers or anything, but that's just not something I typically do. Will there be local multiplayer mode for the campaign or just be single player? CM, everything we're doing for Master Command currently is 100% single player, just because we do not... If you introduce multiplayer, the networking bugs... could potentially like double the development time of your game just by the amount of multiplayer bugs. So I don't want to make a buggy game and repeat the mistakes of Fire Maneuver. So for just this release for Master Command, we really just want to focus on single player for now. Just because I think the game's going to benefit from it. I think it's going to be a better game because of that. All right, guys, I think that's it for now. I have done, let's see, I've done about an hour of answering questions. I will leave this stream up. It's going to be public, so you can go back and rewatch it if you missed any questions. And if you have questions for me, I might be hanging out in the comment section if you have a couple I couldn't answer. But more likely, I have been answering your guys' questions. If you take a look at Armchair History Interactive, and we take a look at the latest video here, I have been answering almost every single question that has been placed. So yeah, you guys can ask me more questions there, but I hope this kind of like live interaction was just some closure for you guys. This is a game that I have really cared about, and it's sad to be done with it, but I know a lot of you guys supported it and you were excited, and I don't want to just like abandon the game and not tell and like not give you guys any kind of closure on that. So I'm glad that we're able to kind of talk about it. And if you have any further questions, let me know and I'll see if I can get to it. Take care. Thank you guys for joining me. Thank you for all the support. Thank you for everybody who played Fire Maneuver and stuck with us with all of our development diaries and offered suggestions, joined our events. Everybody, thank you so much. I appreciate it. I couldn't have done any of this without you guys, and I really do mean that. If you guys weren't here, if I had no community, there'd be no one to play the game. So you guys really, any kind of success